What is up? Welcome back to episode 7 of Triple Dub, the podcast that fills the stat sheet with record setting info about the latest NBA news, trends, and predictions. This is our fourth in season podcast, and we are recording this on the night before the video is released, or a couple nights actually before, in order to gain the best insight possible regarding the most recent games to be up to date when this airs. For reference, right now, we are just reeling from 10 minutes ago. We saw Anthony Davis hit a game winning three pointer for the Lakers to get a 2-0 series lead over the Denver Nuggets. So that was really cool to watch. So now for the initial take, we'll have Rohan.
So as you know, each episode we have an initial take where each of us makes a small prediction about something that's going to happen or just some news about some stuff that's already happened. So I'm going to start with my initial take, and I'm going to be talking about some of the NBA awards that have already happened. So as we all know, Montrezl Harrell won Sixth Man of the Year, and some people thought that Dennis Schroeder may have been snubbed. Another award that happened was Giannis winning the Defensive Player of the Year. This one was more unanimous, but not entirely unanimous. And then Giannis also won the MVP award. I think he was a clear MVP frontrunner, but LeBron was obviously going to be upset. And then Nick Nurse won Coach of the Year. I think that was another easy one. Brandon Ingram won Sixth Man of the Year, and John Morant won Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I agreed with pretty much most of those, apart from maybe Sixth Man. But for my initial take, I'm just going to be talking about the future of some of the teams that were eliminated recently in the playoffs, specifically from the Eastern Conference. Aki will cover the ones in the West. Let's start with the Bucks. So they had a very disappointing end to their promising-looking season, where they lost out to the Heat. The Heat were just the dominant defensive team that we know them to be, and they managed to do enough on offense to win the series, basically. But after the series ended, we saw Giannis block some of his teammates on social media and stuff like that. Maybe a lot of people thought it was going to be a sign that he was going to be traded, that he wanted out. But now we're not really sure. It looks like he probably will be staying in Milwaukee until the end of his contract, which is one more year from now. Apart from that, we have the Raptors. So they lost to the Celtics, and they have a few impending free agents that could be leaving. Well, probably won't be leaving, but could be, in Fred VanVleet, and then also their two centers, Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka, both aging for sure, so they're not really of priority. But I think VanVleet is their kind of the main person they're going to really try and keep around. We also had some news of Montrezl Harrell following the Raptors on social media, maybe a sign that he wants to be traded there, which definitely could be interesting. So we'll see if he stays in LA or if he goes to Toronto.
And I'll be talking about the Western Conference teams that got eliminated in the conference semifinals. I'll start with the one which is a bit more expected to happen, which was the Houston Rockets, who got eliminated by the Lakers in 5 games. It's a really not cool future over there because they just traded all of their players above the height of 6'7" away, except for I guess who was that? Isaiah Hartenstein. I think that guy's still there. But basically that's the situation there. And Mike D'Antoni just walked away from the Rockets on his own accord. So their new coach likely isn't going to be a huge fan of the small ball system. You look at a lot of the impending free agent coaches, if you will. They're definitely good options, but they all seem to at least have a traditional starting lineup. So that's going to be really interesting. They have 2 super maxes on their books. Russell Westbrook played terrible, and James Harden was bad in Game 5. So it's really limited possibilities going forward. They need to make some huge splash, gets really lucky, they've reached their ceiling. The other team, which was the championship favorite, and it was my pick to win the NBA championship. You can see my sort of reaction in a different video a bit earlier. The LA Clippers blew a 3-1 lead to the Denver Nuggets, and that was very surprising to almost all fans. We got the combination of pandemic P and for the first time Kawhi actually choked in the playoffs. And yeah, people were talking like smack the entire time. Like Lou Williams, literally lemon pepper Lou. Patrick Beverly was talking everything to Damian Lillard, but yeah, it came to bite them. Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, Michael Porter Jr., Gary Harris, and the rest of the Denver Nuggets, headed by an amazing coach in Mike Malone. They advanced and are currently facing the LA Lakers. So the Clippers, I think, should run it back. Like it was championship or bust, but they stayed for 2+1. Paul George and Kawhi have 2+1 contracts, and I think that this team is really good. If they lose out on Montrezl Harrell, they need to pick up some other key piece and integrate that into their system. But I think that this team is really solid the way it is. And I think if they can get Montrez off to Toronto with like a sign-in trade for a guy like Van Vliet, maybe that'd be a decent idea. Or Ibaka, maybe that's a decent idea. But yeah, I think their future's still bright.
Right, so that wraps it up for initial takes. Now we move on to trivia. It's pretty much where I'll just ask the other two 5 questions about the NBA, each worth 10 points. Yeah, and after a few more episodes, the winner will make the loser do a forfeit, which has not been decided yet. But to remind everyone of the scores, Aki is in the lead in quite a big one with 120. Rohan has 40. And finally, I'm in the middle with 70. But I can't get questions right because I'm asking them. So maybe Rohan will catch up a bit here. But let's start with the first question. What was the height difference between the short Muggsy Bogues and the very tall Manute Bol? Is it 2 feet, 2'4", 2'8", or 3 feet? And Aki makes the first guess. What is your guess?
Right. So as far as I remember, Muggsy Bogues is 5'3", and Manute Bol is 7'7", making the difference 2 feet 4 inches, or B.
That is correct. And Aki extends his lead to 130. The next question. Which of these nations does not have any first overall picks from it? Is it A, the Bahamas, B, Canada, C, Nigeria, or finally D, France? And Rohan answered first. What is your guess?
Okay, so I use process of elimination for this. The Bahamas, it's going to be DeAndre Ayton. Canada is probably Andrew Wiggins. Nigeria, I'm not sure. And then France, I'm not sure either, but I'm pretty sure France has a lot of good players in the NBA, like Rudy Gobert and Tony Parker, who used to play in Evan Fournier. I'm going to have to go with Nigeria.
You were down to the correct last two, but unfortunately, it was not Nigeria. And Aki's guess, you can go ahead and say it.
Yeah, I actually thank Rohan for his process of elimination because I was debating between Bahamas and France because I forgot about DeAndre Ayton momentarily. I thought he was a pure US guy. So I went with D, France. I think like the players you mentioned, they were all like second round or late first round picks. The most recent Frenchman to be drafted high that I remember is Frank Ntilikina. I think Andy has good insight into how amazing of a player Frank Ntilikina is.
You know, just everyone the Knicks draft is just an insane player. And even if they are insane, they'll probably just like trade him away to the Mavericks for nothing. But anyway, let's move to the third question. What is the newest NBA team? And relocations are not counted in this. It has to be a completely new team. Is it A, the Toronto Raptors, B, the Charlotte Hornets, C, the Memphis Grizzlies, and finally D, the Orlando Magic? And Rohan answers first. What is your guess?
I'd have to go with the Charlotte Bobcats. Well, the Charlotte Hornets, because they used to be the Bobcats, right? I don't really know anything beyond that, so I'm going to have to go with the Charlotte Bobcats or Hornets.
Robot.
They lag?
You lagged out.
You lagged out.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, I know lagged out. Okay, it's fine. I'll just say my answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Yeah, it was a pretty tough question, but I'm gonna have to go with the Charlotte Hornets because I'm pretty sure they used to be the Bobcats. And I don't really know of any other relocations to the same team besides that.
Yep, and that is the correct answer. The Charlotte Hornets, formerly the Charlotte Bobcats, were the most recent addition. All the other ones were also fairly recent, but the Hornets is the correct answer. Now we have the penultimate question. How many three-peats have there been in NBA history? And the Celtics run of 8 will only count as 1, by the way. So the answers are 3, 4, 5, and 6. Rohan answered first. What is your guess?
I don't know too much about the NBA history, but I'm just gonna go ahead and guess 3. I feel like this is wrong.
Yeah, there have been more than 3. So Aki, which of the other answers is your guess?
I was thinking, right? So you said that Celtics was 1. Then Jordan got 2. Then LeBron and not LeBron. Kobe and Shaq got 1. And I guess there could have been one more, maybe in the 80s, maybe George Mikan or maybe Jerry West. So I'll go with 5.
Definitely a bold guess, but he's actually correct. It was actually the other one that he was thinking of was the George Mikan repeat, just the first few years of the NBA. We have one question left. Aki is on 150 and Rohan is on 50. So, last question. Who is the last person to win the NBA dunk contest 3 times? Is it A, Zach LaVine, B, Nate Robinson, C, Vince Carter, or D, Dominique Wilkins? And Aki again has the first answer.
Okay, so Zach LaVine, I think he only won twice. Then of the other 3, I know Nate Robinson was mid 2000s. I know Vince Carter was early 2000s, and then Dominique Wilkins was like 80s and early 90s. So I'm gonna have to go with Nate Robinson.
That is once again correct. Aki extending his lead even further. And Rohan remains 20 points behind me. But that wraps it up for this week's trivia. Let's move on to the main segment.
Thanks for the trivia, Andy. I'm extending my lead, but the chase for last is really tightening up. So we'll see, because I think Andy still has to be a host another time or two. So we'll see if Rohan will be able to make up the difference. So now we're moving on to the main segment, where we're going to be talking about the updates, news, and takes about the games this upcoming week and how they will impact the rest of the playoffs. So first we have our bracket update. And honestly, it's really sad because our entire bracket is basically busted. We all went with general consensus picks overall. We didn't have too many shockers, and some shockers definitely did occur. So for the second round, I had the Bucks winning in 6, the Heat won in 5. I had Boston winning in 6. They actually won in 7, so that was good. On the West, I had the Clippers winning in 5. They lost in 7. They should have won in 5 because they were up 16 before they enraged Paul Millsap. And then I had the Lakers winning in 6. They actually won in 5. Then that still keeps me in a tie for first place with Andy. So his bracket, he correctly predicted the Lakers to beat the Rockets in 5. He also predicted the Clippers to win in 5. Obviously, that didn't work out. He predicted Toronto in 6. Boston won in 7. He predicted Milwaukee in 5. It was the other team in 5. And 600 points behind us is Rohan. He predicted that the Lakers would sweep in the second round. They actually won in 5. He predicted Clippers in 5 like us. Obviously, that didn't turn out well. He predicted Milwaukee in 5. That was unfortunate. He predicted Toronto in 6. That was bad. So basically, almost our entire bracket is busted. For me, both of my championship contenders, the people who make for the championship, are out. And for the others, they still have the Lakers. And honestly, most likely that the Lakers will win and they will overtake me. So most likely Andrew's going to come up with the W at the end of this.
All right, so now let's move on to some predictions for the rest of the NBA playoffs. So there are only 2 series to predict, and the first one is going to be the one in the East, which is the Celtics versus the Heat. So personally, I have this going towards the Heat, and I say that the Heat are going to win in 7. I think there are a couple of reasons for this. I think the Heat, obviously, they're just having a lead right now. They're already up 2-1. So I think just that mere fact shows that it's going to, even if the Celtics may be better, it's going to be hard for them to come back from a deficit like that. But also I think the Heat are more clutch. I think Jimmy Butler is just really, really clutch, and Tyler Hero is also pretty good. Just compared to the Celtics, I think the Heat are just better in high, I guess, pressure situations. The Celtics are definitely good, so that's why I have them still snagging 3 games, but I just think the Heat are going to pull it out.
Yeah, I agree with this. I think the Heat will make the finals as well. Obviously, same reasons. They're already 2-1. I just really like this Heat team in general. I think I've talked about this before. Just the depth that they have at pretty much every position. Just like the culture, especially, is definitely a main reason as to why they're performing much better than a lot of people thought. They just kind of have that extra determination that a lot of other teams have been lacking during the bubble. And they're a very just good defensive team, especially. And but one interesting thing is that they haven't really had an answer so far to Jason Tatum, really. Jason Tatum's still just kind of doing his thing that he usually does, averaging like 25 points a game. So that could definitely be a problem, because if the Celtics have some games where Jason Tatum does that, and then you also have like 1 or 2 other players have really good games, then the Celtics win that game. So we'll have to see if the Heat kind of have a solution to that, and whether they will be able to actually finish off the series.
Yeah, I'm sort of with you also, but I think that the Heat are going to win in 6. I don't think it'll go the full 7 games. If you look at the last game, it was very much an anomaly. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, and Kemba Walker had 20 plus points, and all of them had 50% or better shooting, except for Jason Tatum, who was 1 shot away from 50%. He was 45% shooting. They all were perfect from the free throw line, except for Jaylen Brown, and they combined shot like 40% from 3. In comparison, for the Miami Heat, Jimmy Butler had a slightly off game. He only had 17 points. Then Goran Dragic only made 2 shots the entire game. That's not characteristic of Goran Dragic's actual abilities. Jay Crowder shot 20% from the field, and the bench outside of Tyler Hero scored 6 points on 1 of 12 shooting, which is completely not characteristic for the bench of a deep Miami Heat squad. So I think that it was just an anomaly. And even if you look at the last few minutes, the Celtics had like a 17-point lead with 5 minutes remaining, but with like 2 minutes remaining, it was like a 5-point lead. But obviously, there was too little time remaining, and free throws by Marcus Smart ultimately sealed the deal. But the moral of the story is the Heat can come back, and they are a clutch team. I think this series is going to be over in 5 or 6.
Yeah, that was definitely interesting to see all of your takes on that. But now let's move on to the other game, and this is going to be in the West. We have the Lakers facing off against the Nuggets. So I think the Lakers are obviously the preferred team to win this one. And personally, I think they are going to win, but it's not necessarily going to be a sweep, even though they're already up 2-0. I think it's going to be a 4-2 series, so Lakers in 6. And this is for a couple of reasons. So I think the first game, like a lot of people said, they're saying like refs in 4. I think that just means that I guess the refs were just really biased towards the Lakers, and I totally agree. I think the officiating in that game was absolute just not good at all. I think obviously the NBA wants LeBron to win because he drives up viewership, but the refereeing was just so bad. I think the Nuggets should have won that game, or should have had a way better chance at winning that game at least. But if you look at the most recent game that actually just ended, it was a very close game where AD actually won with a game-winning shot. I think with this game, it shows that the Nuggets have, with fair officiating, the Nuggets have a very good potential to actually come close to beating the Lakers, if not beat the Lakers. But I think just the Nuggets overall, they weren't looking too great. I think Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray were obviously doing their things. But if you look at the rest of the Nuggets team, they weren't really, I guess they were playing all right, but like Michael Porter Jr. is playing pretty well. But if you look at the other starters, like Gary Harris and Paul Millsap and Jeremy Grant, I mean, they're playing their minutes, but they weren't really shooting that well. They weren't taking good shots. I think if the rest of the Nuggets starters can step up, they should be in a better position. Obviously, the Lakers have LeBron and AD, but their starters were playing fairly well, except for Danny Green. But Danny Green's Danny Green. Like we know how he is. But I think if the Nuggets can step their game up, besides Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, they should be in a good position to win, or at least 2 games.
Yeah, I don't really, I don't see a way that the Nuggets really come back to this, even though they have looked pretty good. Obviously, they kind of have like set a precedent, I guess, twice of them coming back from being 2 games down. They did it in both of the first 2 rounds, and it's entirely possible that they do it again. They did look pretty good today, but I think just on paper, the Lakers just are the better team. They have the stars, and they really just like should win the series. It's kind of theirs to lose, I guess. The Nuggets, even if they have good performance, they're not really going to win games, in my opinion, unless the Lakers have a particularly bad performance at the same time. So I don't know. I'm not really sure about. I do like the Nuggets, and I like Jamal Murray, and I like Nikola Jokic, but I just don't think they have the pieces to take on this team that really a lot of people expected to win the championship or make the championship. So for me, it's Lakers in 5 probably, or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that this game, even though it looks like it was super cool and an amazing game, I don't think it was really that good of a game. It was a really messy game. The Nuggets had 19 turnovers. Jamal Murray had 5 himself. And the Lakers had 23 turnovers. LeBron had 6, Rondo had 5, and Kuzma had 4. And there were so many fouls called. There were 30 fouls called on the Lakers, just absolutely insane, and 22 called on the Nuggets. Just for reference, Dwight Howard played 12 minutes and accumulated 5 fouls. And like it just not a very good game realistically. LeBron was carrying the Lakers on his back to a 10-point lead at halftime. He had like 20 points in his first 12 to 13 minutes of play on extremely efficient shooting. He cooled off, but then he fed Anthony Davis, who ultimately came in the clutch and won the game. Ultimately, I think the X factor for Denver is Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr., every time he stepped on the court in this series, has been absolutely amazing. He has like lighted up stat sheets. I don't think the Lakers have an answer for Michael Porter Jr. If I was Mike Malone, I would bench Jeremy Grant in favor of Michael Porter Jr. and play Michael Porter Jr. 35 minutes in Game 3 and just see what happens, because clearly the way Michael Porter Jr. has been playing the first 2 games, he deserves the ball more. He was talking all that smack during the Clippers series, and I think he has the talent to back it up. I was a huge fan of Michael Porter Jr. since his high school days, and I think that he can get that talent in the series. So I still have the Lakers winning in 5 or 6.
All right, so that's our predictions. Next week we'll probably have a better idea, and we'll make some predictions on the finals themselves. But now we're moving on to our team of the week, but we're not really doing the week because that'd be a bit weird, having like combined different rounds. So we're just doing the team of the conference semifinals. As always, it is 2 guards, 2 forwards, and a center. I'll just start with some of the guards that I kind of had in my like short list, I guess. So I had Jamal Murray from the Nuggets. He had a very good series against the Clippers. The Nuggets won rather unexpectedly. From the Heat, I was kind of deciding between Dragic and Duncan Robinson, but I think Dragic was just more consistently good, so I put Dragic in. And then for the Celtics, I put both Marcus Smart and Kemba. I think they were both good during the series. They both averaged around like 17 points per game-ish and were good defenders. And they led the Celtics to a win over the Raptors, which is pretty impressive. And finally, James Harden. Although he lost, he was the highest scorer out of them. He had 33 points per game, but he did lose, so that's probably that's a bit of a downside for him. I ended up going with Jamal Murray for one of them. I think this is probably the one that had to be included. He was the highest scorer out of the ones that actually won their series. He and Nikola Jokic just beating the Nuggets to an improbable win over the Clippers. I think he definitely deserves a spot. And if we did team of the first round, he would deserve that spot too as well. And then the other one, I was debating between one of the Celtics and Goran Dragic, but I went with Goran Dragic. He was a more consistent scorer over his series. He won in 5 over the Bucks, which is more impressive than winning in 7, obviously. So I think just Dragic and the Heat put up a more convincing and impressive performance against the Bucks than the Celtics did against the Raptors. So I went with Dragic.
Yeah, I really don't.
Oh, sorry, you can go.
Sure, yeah. I really don't have too much to say on that because, like, I think that Jamal Murray definitely deserves to be there. And personally, although my more favorite player is Kemba, that doesn't matter to this because he kind of choked in game 6 and 7, so he can't really be on that list. I would ultimately put Goran Dragic. He's been absolutely amazing. He has handled his matchup. People were calling Eric Bledsoe one of the top guard defenders in the league, and I think that Goran Dragic proved that was not true. So I think he's done an absolutely incredible job in this playoff run thus far, and reminding him like why he was an all-star that one year.
Okay, so now we have the forwards, and again, I kind of had just like a list of 5 players that I think could be in. They were from the Lakers. I had LeBron James, just a very solid performance, 26 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists a game. It's very impressive, but that's honestly just like typical LeBron. I also had Jimmy Butler, 23, 6, and 5. Not as impressive as LeBron, but he definitely was more. He's just he's not really like a stat patter, I guess. He's just kind of more of a leader, and that's what makes him a great player. Jason Tatum, 23 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists a game. Very impressive. Along with another Celtic, who was Jaylen Brown. Not as impressive stat-wise with 21 points and 9 rebounds a game. But the one thing that was kind of the main factor for why I put him in is his defensive performance against the Raptors. He pretty much shut Pascal Siakam down every game. Siakam was just not very good the whole series, and Jaylen Brown is the main reason for that. So he gets an honorable mention, but he doesn't end up in my lineup. And then finally, also from the Lakers, I have Anthony Davis, who 25 points and 12 rebounds a game, very solid stats. For one of them, I wanted to include a Laker. I ended up going with LeBron because he did average more points per game and more assists. He's also just more of kind of like the main factor, like leader, I guess, on the Lakers. And just like besides the stats, he was just more impressive during the games, just like by watching. For the other one, it was between Jason Tatum and Jimmy Butler for me, but I ended up going with Jimmy Butler. Tatum was a little bit more impressive stat-wise, but like not much. And I just think that Jimmy Butler was a more valuable player. I feel like, the Celtics, they have so many pieces, and Jason Tatum wasn't really like the one key piece that made them a win as much as Jimmy Butler was kind of the one key piece that made the Heat win over the Bucks. Obviously, I already talked about how the Heat win was more impressive because just like it was a better team in the Bucks. and they won fewer games. And just Jimmy Butler was kind of the leader for them, so I feel like he definitely deserves to be in the team of the week.
Yeah, I totally agree with you here. I think there are definitely a lot of good candidates for the forward position, but obviously LeBron should go in there. But I do think Jimmy Butler deserved it. I think he even hit a game winner over Giannis in game two. He shot over Giannis, but he was fouled. I guess there were some people were a little bit, just they weren't sure if it was a foul, but he still hit two game-winning free throws. I think that was really clutch of him. He proved to be a really good leader for a young team with players that are only having like 1 or 2 years of experience. I think just the overall play of Jimmy Butler and the impact that he had offensively and defensively was just really good for the Heat. So I think he totally deserves the spot.
Okay, finally we have the centers. I'll just list a few, but I think there's really only one obvious winner here. But I'll just give Ibaka an honorable mention. 13 points and 7 rebounds a game. That's okay, I guess. Also have Bam Adebayo, 17 points, 12 rebounds, and even 5 assists per game. But he actually loses in all 3 of those stat categories to the clear winner, in my opinion, Nikola Jokic. 25 points, 14 rebounds, and 6 assists per game in a win against the Clippers, which was very impressive. I don't really even have to explain this one. Nikola was just better than the other 2. He should be in the team of the week.
Yeah, people were talking about how they need to get haircuts during quarantine, but the Clippers are gone, so oh well, it's unfortunate now. So, but yeah, I think it's just pretty obvious has to be Nikola Jokic. There's like no really other good alternative who's just been better. I think we know that now. I think, in my opinion, and I think the general consensus of the NBA community, Joel Embiid is the most talented center in the NBA, but the best center in the NBA is Nikola Jokic. I think that's basically the consensus of the NBA community now.
So that just about wraps it up for our main segment. So now let's move on to our hot takes. Just open my hot take document. Cool.
You're recording.
Yeah, I know. 3.
Wait, who's hosting?
Robot.
Me.
Okay.
3, 2. So as you all know, our hot take segment is where we each make a potentially controversial prediction about the performance of one team in the bubble, or the playoffs in this case. So right now, my hot take is going to be about the Nuggets. And I think that the Nuggets are going to beat the Lakers in at least one game by 25 or more points. And this is for a couple of reasons. I think the Nuggets are a really explosive team. So even though the Lakers are really good on defense, the Nuggets showed some really good offensive performances against the Jazz and the Clippers, who are both really good defensive teams. I think Jamal Murray definitely has the potential to erupt for many points. He actually dropped 50 a couple of times previously against the Jazz. I think that really shows how explosive he can be. I think Nikola Jokic too. He's just really good. I think Nikola Jokic does have the potential to have like a 30-point triple-double. Like that doesn't even sound that far-fetched, honestly, considering how good of a passer he is. And then if MPJ or Jeremy Grant or Paul Millsap or just any of the other players just step up and have just a single good game alongside Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, I think that if one of them just has like at least 20 points, I think they'll definitely be able to have a really big lead over the Lakers.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting take. I don't know. I think that all games are either going to be pretty close, or it's going to be a Lakers blowout because Lakers are like a veterans team. I don't think they'll get blown out that easily. But my hot take is going to be that Michael Porter Jr. will have a 25-point game or a 30-point game against the Lakers at one point in this series. This harkens back to what I was saying a bit earlier when discussing about the series. And I think that the Nuggets need to play Michael Porter Jr. more because the Lakers don't have an adequate response to them. They don't want LeBron expending too much of his effort on the defensive side of the ball because they need him on the offensive side. And other than him, there's not too many forward defenders who are good on the Lakers. So I think that Michael Porter Jr. will have a breakout game.
Okay, I can definitely see that happening if the Nuggets decide to make some changes over the next few games. My hot take's just going to be a bit more big picture. It's just going to be straight up. I think the Heat are going to win the finals this year, which, saying it now isn't actually that surprising. But if you look back to just like when they were a fourth seed, no one really even considered them as a finals contender. But I just think against the Lakers, you kind of have a matchup between the you got LeBron and Jimmy Butler. I think that's a decent matchup for Jimmy Butler. I think he might, even if he does allow LeBron to still have some decent performances, it won't be he'll be able to at least control him a little bit. The same kind of goes with like Bam Adebayo and Anthony Davis. Bam Adebayo is just a great defender in general. He may not have yeah, I think he'll be able to, similarly to Jimmy Butler, just control Anthony Davis, hold him back a little. And even if LeBron and AD do outplay Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, I think where the Lakers really do have a weakness is in their depth. And I think that's where the Heat have a very big strength because, the Heat have just at guards, they have Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson, and Goran Dragic. Whereas the Lakers' backcourt is just in general very, very weak. Got like Contavious Caldwell Pope and yeah, I don't even remember because they're just that bad. I think the Heat are just going to have a much better performance, at least in the backcourt. The front court, again, is just going to be a very close matchup. And I think just the depth and the kind of the backcourt of the Heat and also just that determination to win, which I think they have, which the Heat have, will lead them to a championship. Obviously, this was all assuming that the finals will even be between the Heat and the Lakers, but that's just my prediction.
Definitely reasonable. I mean, I personally think that it's going to be Heat versus Lakers. I think the Lakers will ultimately come up on top, but it's definitely a possibility. I think in playoff atmospheres, stars matter, but depth definitely also matters, and especially in some unpredictable situation like we're in right now.
All right, so that just wraps it up for this episode of Triple Dub. Sorry it's been a while. We've just been busy with school, but hopefully we'll get this video out pretty soon. This is the Benchwarmers signing off. See ya.